This is Kevin Martin coming to you from the Lake Erie Regional Grape Program, and it is our winter season. It was really cold last week, but it does feel like summer today. I do believe there was some lime going on. We had a nice hard freeze last week, and people could actually get tractors in vineyards. I don't believe that's the case now, but we did have some questions about some soil samples come in, and I wanted to address those. So we had some questions about micronutrients and what micronutrients do for grapes, and what growers should be doing in terms of micronutrients. In terms of common practices, boron has always been a big one, and we've also seen growers use things like copper as well. That being said, at least from the growers that I've gotten questions from and from most of the soil tests that I see, at least, and taking into account that the way I look at this is through an economic lens, we do need to work on our soil pH before we start looking at things like micronutrients. So a good way of putting that is, these micronutrients, they occur naturally. They're in the soil. We just need to make them available. It is possible that we will see deficiencies of micronutrients at one point or another, but until we maximize their availability, we just don't know where that balance is going to play out. And we're seeing soil tests with a pH of 4.9, 5.4, and at that point it probably makes a lot more sense to apply lime than it does to look at micronutrients. Just to give you kind of a scale of what the vine needs in an annual cycle, the biggest micronutrients that a vine is looking for would be like magnesium and sulfur at 5.5 pounds, 4 pounds, and that's assuming you have very large vines. We remove 10 ton of fruit from those vineyards, and you're looking at maybe 1.5 pounds of each of those contained within the fruit, so that needs to be replenished either through natural processes, through uptake efficiency by changing your pH, or maybe it does eventually need to be applied, but we really haven't seen that to be the norm. It's more the exception rather than the rule. So in terms of liming to maximize availability, a few questions did come up. What we want to do is we want to take a look at the quality of our lime. So when we buy lime, we want to buy actual real lime. In New York State, you've got to be licensed. If you're licensed, you've got to give a report, and the Department of Ag and Markets does test lime that is sold by dealers. And what we're looking for is a very high effective neutralizing value, and that's based on the effective calcium carbonate equivalent combined with fineness. So how much neutralizing power it has is the first part of that, and the fineness is how quickly it's going to react in the soil. And we need very fine lime because we're going to have to wait a long time anyway. We're in a no-till situation. We don't do a lot of tillage, so we're looking at to reach 12 to 18 inches of soil depth, it might take 10 years to see an impact. So as we lime, we want to continue to lime even if we see soil pH rise to 6.0, 6.3. If we know or we can assume that if we dig down a foot, we're going to see something like 4.9. If you know your pH is higher in your lower depths, maybe you can be a little bit more conservative with your practices. So, you might know the history of the field. Maybe it was corn 10 years ago and it was plowed to 18 inches deep, and you're pretty confident that you've got a high pH in your subsoil. Or maybe you've done a test and you've figured that out. You've determined that for whatever reason you've got higher pH down below. If you're in Niagara County, maybe none of this applies because you've got some pretty neutral soils to begin with. But that being said, for the most part, there are some minimum guarantees for lime sold in New York State if it's marketed as lime. That's probably not good enough. Typically speaking, it is hard to speak in generalities, but it is usually going to be more cost effective to apply higher quality lime. So a higher effective neutralizing value is usually, even if it costs an extra $2 or $3, $4 a ton, is usually going to save you money because you will have to apply less per acre. And most of the cost of lime is typically in the shipping. So if we pay $12, $13 a ton for lime, we usually pay another $20, maybe $18 a ton to ship it in, depending on where it's located. Now, if somebody said, look, I found this great high-quality lime and it's $75 a ton, it might depend on how high quality it really is, but that we haven't seen too much of. So for the most part, an extra few dollars a ton is usually justified if you can document a higher rating for that lime. Fineness in particular, I would say, if you look at the lime report card, that would be what would really motivate me to spend a little bit of extra, since we are in a no-till situation, and we don't really want to wait 2 years for it to break down. If we're going to have to wait another 8 for it to work itself down into the soil, the faster the better, in terms of maximizing your return on investment. That's all I have for now. Hopefully you found this informative, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact us or comment down below in the comment section if you're on our YouTube page. Thanks a lot.